Welcome. I'm Barbara Call, Senior Director of Content Strategy at Network World Marketing Services, and I'll be your host and moderator for this webcast titled Adopting for Change, IT Technology Providers Evolve Their Services and Solutions, and brought to you by Network World and Juniper Networks. I have two speakers joining me today. First up is Patrick Malempi, Juniper Fellow at Juniper Networks. Welcome, Patrick. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I joined Juniper Networks 2 years ago as part of an acquisition of a company called 128 Technology. And I've become a Juniper Fellow and fell in love with Juniper Networks and their AI-driven enterprise networks. And I'm so excited to be here today.
All right. Nice to have you, Patrick. And my guest speaker is Sally Eves, CEO of Tomorrow's Technology Today. Welcome, Sally. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. Lovely to be here with you both. Really looking forward to it. I'm Sally Eves. I kind of work across emergent technology, education, and social impact. So a CTO by background. And as you mentioned, the CEO of a technology consultancy, also a professor in emergent technology, and founder of Aspirational Futures, which is very much about sustainability, diversity in tech, and kind of really scaling tech as a force for good.
All right. Nice to have you, Sally.
Thank you.
So a big part of what we're talking about today is an exclusive study that was conducted by Foundry on behalf of Juniper Networks. And I want to start by just setting up a little bit of background information. We focus this research on the following audiences. As you can see on the slide, a sub-industry IT, we had 45% in IT consulting and 35% were MSP or VARs. In the telecom sub-industry sector, 36% were internet, 24% telecom, 24% consulting, and so on. Functional areas included IT, 65%, and operations, 21%. And the company size was a range, 38% mid-sized companies, 35% large enterprise, and the rest were SMBs. So let's get into our findings. One of the first questions we asked was about challenges. And no surprise, the number one challenge here was security, with 47% of respondents. Other challenges include customer experience, sustainability, cost cutting, even automation. And so my first question to Sally is this mimic, and are you seeing this in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised by what those key focus areas are in terms of challenges. But what I'd love to maybe drill into in a bit more detail is the one about sustainability coming into the top three. And I think that's a particularly interesting one. I think the resonance there for MSPs has probably never been higher than it is right now in terms of priority. And I think the biggest reasons for that are, consumers are being increasingly conscious. So are ecosystem partners about what they're looking for, and a clear demonstration, commitment, and accountability around sustainability. But also it's being increasingly recognized, I'm seeing, by MSPs as a source of shared value. You can get better efficiency within your operations by doing this well, but also you get that buy-in from consumers and partners as well. So it's that kind of shared value proposition, particularly with the energy crisis that we're in, particularly in EMEA, but very much globally too. It's becoming not just a nice to have to deliver on that, it's an imperative. So getting that smart technology right to really reduce consumption, to manage better, to manage smarter is so important. Well, I think one of the challenges, though, sometimes is around some of the legacy tech and locked in kind of contracts that maybe aren't using the latest technology in this area. I'm also seeing an intention action gap sometimes when it comes to sustainability. MSPs, as a lot of organizations, want to do the right thing around this. They want to deliver on it, but the how sometimes can get a little bit messy along the way. And I would say the biggest challenge there and the biggest reason for that and the biggest improvement opportunity is around measurement. I looked at something recently, some research I've been involved in, and it was saying it was around the 85% mark of organizations that want to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, but only 9% are baselining it and doing the measurement, the benchmarking along the way, and doing that holistically, so internal and external dimensions. So that's the one I'd love to pick out more. I think it's a huge opportunity to do this right, and I'm really interested that's now reached the top three in those results. I think it's very, very fascinating.
Patrick, any thoughts to add?
Well, I totally agree about sustainability surprising me at being so high on the list. Security being number one it's kind of like, you wake up in the morning and you worry, is today the day that I'm going to die? Like security is one of those things that you just worry about. And so it always ranks number one. But when it comes to actionable things, and what do you do strategically? Sustainability is really about keeping your network secure and running it and operating it in a way that it just covers all these other bases. So I was surprised to see sustainability to show up so high. I think that one of the sleeper things about sustainability is it's really all about, it's not just about vendors and multiple vendors, and it's about staff and training and operating this equipment in a way that we can survive and as MSPs and into the future in terms of reducing costs and increasing our accuracy and our execution in a way that makes our lives easier. So it's a really important aspect, and I agree with everything.
All right, thank you. That's great. So I want to drill into one of the other challenges we saw in the survey. We're talking about automation. And so we asked about the importance of automation and AI ops for internal IT. And you can see here that 82% found it crucial or very important. And then the importance of automation and AI ops for part of the solutions you offer. A little bit lower numbers here, 26% crucial, 49% very important. And so my question is, how can automation help IT teams? I know there's some less focus on manual tasks with automation, focus on transformational areas, simplifying operations. Sally, what would you add to that list?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there, really focusing on the power of partnership, kind of man and machine, so to speak, reducing the mundane, but also providing that catalyst and the foundation to then accelerate the transformational. So AI ops for me, so many benefits. So one would be time management and event prioritization. That's right up there for me. Definitely optimization and reduction of IT spend. It really supports that. I mentioned it already, the catalyst for innovation. So again, you talked there about kind of reducing the manual and the mundane tasks, and that's so key. You need that opportunity to have the higher level thinking and to look at the anomalies, have that time for those detailed granular aspects that everything else can be taken care of. That's where the money shot can be in terms of finding out where there might be an opportunity or a problem. Also, the expansion of collaboration. AI ops really supports that. And I think that's one of the biggest learning opportunities and things we've seen over the last couple of years, that power of coming together and diversity of teams to support that. I'm seeing some really good things around AI ops team structures that supports that. Other areas would be, say, streamlining product improvements. And you mentioned it obviously about that kind of benchmark really to enhance automation as well. And the other thing for me, cloud. There's a lot of talk at the moment about how you return your investment on cloud. So many organizations are reviewing what's gone well and what could be improved upon and how to measure that better. I think AI ops is a great way to help return and maximize that return on in terms of hybrid cloud technologies too. And the last one, but very important one, the user experience. Again, it supports that. So multi-level benefits, very holistic benefits. And again, it's all about that power of partnership and optimizing meaningful work time.
Patrick, I see you nodding your head. You're in agreement with that.
I mean, at Juniper, we really believe in AI ops, and our whole business unit at Juniper is called the AIDE, where we have a cloud-based, we stand up cloud-based AI services for running WAN networks. And what's funny about it is that every vendor now claims to have, every vendor of every product claims to have some sort of AI extensions and AI capabilities. But when you go to debug a network or run a network, what you want is, and I think the word holistic came up, you want something that covers all the equipment, because all this equipment works together. And if you're not essentially covering the full stack of equipment that you have in your WAN network, your ability to operate it using AI is going to be challenged. You'll have conflicting outcomes. You'll have nonsense to resolve with human decision making. And what's remarkable, if you've ever been an IT professional or worked on solving problems in networks, what's remarkable is how consistent the algorithms are for finding the problem and solving it, and how if you break it into stages of what people actually do when they either configure or do troubleshooting, and very frequently these are related at the same time, because you configure something and everything stops working. So when you do troubleshooting, you're often gathering data, you're often analyzing it and coming up with theories of how could this have happened, and look for more data. And the notion of a network that's constantly doing this and developing baselines and using models to actually help humans is just phenomenal. We're seeing an 80% reduction in the time it takes to resolve problems. This is human staff time for people that are using the AIDE products. That's a game changer. And when you think of, when you think of, is there any other better way to do it? There just isn't. So I'm surprised these numbers aren't 100%. I think the reason why they're not is some of the respondents may not have had experience with this technology yet.
All right, great. Thank you. So one of the other questions we asked is about tool sprawl. And as you can see here in the slide, most are using 2 to 3, but 41% are using 3 or more tools. The average number was 4.1 tools. And so some of the issues with tool sprawl, right? It increases complexity, requires integration. Some tools have overlapping capabilities. So my question is, does tool sprawl increase security risk? And what are the other adverse effects that we haven't talked about? Sally, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I hate this phrase normally, but I think this is really appropriate. I think it becomes a tipping point when it comes to tools. The intention can be fantastic in terms of that smart monitoring, but when there's too many from too many different providers, you are absolutely right. It adds complexity, it reduces visibility, and it can really add to the burden of IT teams. So it can have the opposite effect. You know, we have so much data to deal with, and it's always the question, isn't it? How do you get from data volume to data value? And if we have too many tools looking at this, actually it can really contribute to that challenge, and you get too much noise. So from a security perspective, you might be missing the real threat, and getting ahead of that, and looking at what the threats are to come, you might be missing that real nugget of data. So managing that the right way is really important. I think there's some other trends around this as well. Expectations around technology have really changed about wants and needs over the last couple of years, and I'm seeing some research I've been PI on or principal investigator on. It was around 50% of employees were saying they're frustrated by the technology that they're using, particularly around monitoring. And it was actually becoming a decision point to leave a role, for example, is a huge issue. And we're also seeing, particularly on IT operational teams, a lot of challenges around burnout. And this is one of the things that was coming forward as one of the contributing factors was tool sprawl, not having kind of that consistency of view to really drive your decision making in the most effective way. It was adding burden rather than reducing it. So for me, it really emphasizes the importance of having something from a monitoring point of view that's comprehensive, consistent, and consolidated. So you've got that kind of single view, and you're always looking at who your end customer is and what you're monitoring and why. So it has to be aligned to the purpose of doing so. Otherwise, you get like stovepipe dashboards and conflicting data and that sea of alerts, and you miss the real value. So it's a really important one to identify what the real issues are. So getting it right is massively important.
All right, Patrick, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I don't want to mention the name of any vendors, but as we know, there have been some massive security issues with tools. And the interesting thing about tools is oftentimes for them to see or get the visibility they need into your route tables or into your actual network operations, they need to look at secured information or encrypted information. So now you're solving, or you're spreading out the management of your cryptographic keys to different vendors and to different tools. And inevitably, if you're doing an AI solution in your network for running your WAN, or if you're doing this as an MSP or whatever it is that, however big the network is, how many, it doesn't matter. If you're doing this with artificial intelligence, the chance is you're already collecting all the things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
By example, at the Mist cloud at Juniper, they'll see that a user's having trouble connecting to the Wi-Fi. They'll actually see it in their access points. So what do? They'll actually grab a trace, like a PCAP file, automatically thinking, well, there might be an IT guy that wants to look at this. And they'll grab the trace and send it up to the cloud. Now, maybe nobody will look at it, but in the likely event that someone needs to look at it, or even in the future having a computer-assisted intelligent tool that looks at the PCAP trace. I mean, the truth is, you shouldn't need any tools if you have a good AI solution. You shouldn't need any. Now, it's going to be hard to get people to break away from all these tools. And they usually use these tools like for one problem. Like if I use this tool, it helps me with this one problem. Or if I use this other tool, I can solve this kind of a problem. And so people use different kinds of tools. Now, we'll always need test equipment. We'll always need to deal with layer one test tools and things like that. But I agree with everything that's been said here. And I think a good AI solution replaces most of the tools, if not almost all of them.
That's a great point, really optimizing and being fully aware of what you already have. And are you making the best use of that? I think there's a lot of pragmatism around that. I think that's such a true point there. So yeah, I just want to echo that. Excellent.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you both. Very interesting. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about SD-WAN. According to our survey results, 25% of our respondents have a greenfield deployment and 37% are actively involved with replacing a managed SD-WAN solution. So my question is, many enterprises are sold on the idea that SD-WAN simplifies things, but it can actually complicate things. So Sally, have you seen that to be true?
Yeah, I think where I've seen most complexity is looking at it from a market point of view. I think it still remains quite fragmented, and the number of different service offerings around and products around for people to look at, they've each got their kind of differentiated user set, shall we say, and proprietary SD-WAN controllers and managers within that. And that can be a great opportunity, but I think also for MSPs, it can be quite a burden sometimes as well, and a complicating factor. Particularly, I said, you've got the different offerings, you've got multi-level architecture, and that can create challenges. And I think if you look at it as well, when you look at the proliferation of cloud providers too, and different numbers of vendors there, and also products that are just labeled, SD-WAN, and literally nothing else. In the same way as you have like zero trust products, and it looks like you can just buy something on the shelf and you're once and done. I think that creates a bit of complexity and also some confusion. And we were talking offline a little bit earlier about what Juniper does with Mist AI. What I love about that is the fact it does have that consistency, and you've got that one AI system across all the different elements. So that's a real differentiator, and that helps to avoid that confusion. So you get all the benefits that SD-WAN has to offer. So that would be my take on that, look at it from the market angle. All
right, Patrick, anything you'd like to add?
Well, SD-WAN does get complicated sometimes, and I can't deny that. I think there's so many problems that people have been trying to solve in their WAN networks for a long time. And SD-WAN really was born out of the notion of the public clouds coming into prevalent use, and Office 365 and other cloud services that people are consuming. And I'll call it generally poor sort of centralized security at data centers, that all of the hub and spoke connections from the branch sites going through the data center on their way on back to the internet. And so there became a lot of real interest in, well, why can't I, make these things route directly or more easily, and at the same time, start using lower grade, lower cost circuits to try to lower my cost. So suddenly people are doing application aware routing, which is really complicated. I mean, it is like the amount of configuration, the amount of intelligence, and the amount of understanding of what people want got a little bit ahead of its skis, and people started wanting things. All the startups that were doing SD-WAN provided it, and we created a lot of complexity. When Juniper Networks bought 128 Technology, the first thing they said is, we want to get this into the cloud and get rid of all this. I mean, everybody has the same wants. Everybody has, I want my Office 365 traffic to do this. I want my Teams stuff to be great. I want my Zoom stuff to be great. I want my Windows update stuff to take a back seat. Every company and every WAN is 90% overlap in terms of what it wants. And so why not sort of figure that out for everybody all at once? And that's kind of what a cloud-based AI operations can do for people, because you don't have to reinvent that stuff. There's another subtle, and I don't mean to be taking too long on this answer, but there's another subtle thing when you have a cloud-based SD-WAN connecting many customers to the same services, is you actually learn things about a service. Like, let's say Zoom's having trouble, that would affect all of your customers. Now, if, in the absence of a cloud-based service, every single IT manager would be getting screamed at, why isn't my Zoom working? And yet, meanwhile, Zoom's having trouble. And having that sort of global view of what's going on across a whole range of customers is incredibly powerful as well. So the future is going to be this cloud-based operational oversight, and that will simplify your SD-WAN. Without it, you're going to have to figure this all out on your own.
All right. Thank you both. Excellent information. So one of the other questions we asked our respondents was the type of technology that customers are asking about. And so the top three answers here, we had network security, which does not include SASE, 53%, connecting to public cloud, 44%, internet and SaaS performance at 43%, and managed Wi-Fi LAN at 35%. And so I think this is surprising, right? Very few customers are asking about SASE, even though network security is a top concern. Sally, what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's another example of kind of mind the gap, to use that expression, isn't there? In terms of, I talked about earlier about intention and action. Here's probably an example around perception or awareness and action as well, because you're absolutely right. The top challenges would align with a SASE approach, but it's not being mentioned at all. So for me, that's an education and awareness piece more than anything else to show what benefits it brings in terms of that holism and agile and adaptive service to digital business, definitely. So for me, it's more about education and awareness, but maybe also reflects that other challenges consumers are drilling into at the moment as well. And I go back to that word complexity and also just the speed of challenges that are happening at the moment. Perhaps customers are dealing and prioritizing those and aren't quite ready. So I think there's a readiness issue here, or maybe think that they're not, and there's too much complexity to bring this in. So for me, it's an awareness piece more than anything else, and maybe just reflecting on other challenges and complexity that's being dealt with right now.
Patrick, I'm going to guess you agree with that.
Yeah, this was the most surprising thing I saw in this whole survey. It really was, because if you listen to Gartner, you listen to our own internal marketing people about the size of the SASE market or the interest in it, this didn't line up in my mind. If you asked people the question differently, if you said, do you think that rather than having a security stack at 30,000 locations, that you could have a handful of centralized ones sharing data in real-time feeds, would that be a more effective architecture? I think everybody would be like, yeah, yeah, of course that's what we want. So I think you're right that it's a matter of education and knowledge being traversed, because I think people recognize that security is getting more complicated and more real-time and requires more data feeds. And that's really hard to do on a widely distributed basis.
All right, thank you. Very good. A few more stats I want to talk about. We asked about services that providers are offering right now, and we also asked about the future. So the services they offer right now run the gamut: Wi-Fi, managed security, managed LAN, connectivity, some other results you can see on screen here. And then services for the future really talked about SASE, SD-WAN, managed security, managed LAN. Just curious what your take is there, Sally.
I think the most interesting one, I'm going to pick up from our last question in terms of SASE, because it's coming out as the top most interested service to offer in the future, yet it's the one that was being least asked about in terms of the customer response just now. So again, it's another example of one of those gaps. It stresses to me that awareness education piece. And as was discussed quite now as well, I think it might be a language proposition in terms of how you're describing what a key challenge is and a way to resolve it. I think we're maybe not picturing that in quite the right way for consumers to really understand the benefits there. So that's the biggest flag to me. There's an intention action gap again in terms of what organizations are seeing are the most interested service to provide and what feedback we're getting from consumers. And I think it's a communication issue rather than a want and need issue, because it really is an incredibly good fit for what needs to be done from that security perspective and what we can really offer and go forward with. So that's the most striking thing for me in there. I'm not surprised around the others, particularly around managed security. Again, so many organizations are challenged with that. It's something I get involved in hands-on on a very regular basis, so not surprised about that at all. But for me, it's at 19%. It shows that something needs to be done now to really make that an opportunity that can be really, really seized upon.
Patrick, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's fascinating that SASE and SD-WAN were the top two, because they were like we were talking about, they ranked lower in the previous question. But those two go hand in hand together. I mean, once the network layer understands sort of application-specific requirements and destination targets and can route things appropriately, SASE becomes incredibly powerful, because now you can pick and choose what kinds of security you need to optimize your network. I think if you go further down the list, and you'll see that there's managed LAN and managed Wi-Fi, what operators need to do is manage all of these things, all four of these things that people have, and possibly more in the future. You really need one system for managing your LAN, your Wi-Fi, your security on site, your SASE in the cloud, and your SD-WAN or your routing network. You really need one system for that if you're an operator. And we strongly believe in that, and we've committed our entire strategy at Juniper towards building a full stack of equipment that is controlled by a single AI-driven network operation center. So we believe in this slide more than anything, but it's like take the top 6 bars and add them all together and say that's what it's basically what everybody needs.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. It's that consolidation piece, making it easier to be able to do all of these things, but also just supporting all of that with the culture and education change that's needed as well. Because again, I really think there's an awareness piece here. And particularly, as you were saying, SASE takes everything really from secure SD-WAN and goes up a level, particularly around the cloud-based solution and, eliminating geographical boundaries and things like that as well, or limitations. So I couldn't agree more strongly. I think it just shows just a little bit of pathway we need to do to be able to realize that. And I love your example there that you mentioned about what you're doing, because it really is becoming integrative and making it easier, giving a better experience and kind of taking away some of that complexity. So yeah, I love the trajectory there. I think it's super important to say.
Awesome. Thanks, Sally. And let's just continue that as our last question. What are the key takeaways and learnings here for our audience?
No problem at all. So I'll mention, if we reflect about what we've spoken about so far, maybe something we haven't spoken about would be a key takeaway for me. So I'd just love to bring in like a different angle on this. So for me, change management, we haven't spoken about that as much in this conversation. And I think sometimes it's one of those underexplored areas. So when we're talking about the type of changes we need to deliver here and that agile approach to make it happen, we need to invest in the right change management processes as well. So for me, things like CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, are a really effective way to reduce risk of change and be more incremental and agile along the way. So I'd love to mention that. And again, we've talked a lot about the technology that's making a difference here, but I always have this message about investing in the pillars that are beneath that. So the right types of processes, the empowering type of culture, and the skills uplift as well to support this. I do a lot of work around education and making sure, for example, literacy around technology and around the type of security skills we're talking about here is available, across all roles of your organization, because it takes everyone. It is that shared responsibilities piece. So alongside the type of technology we're talking about, the AI that's empowering that active intelligence to get ahead of the types of threats, etc., we need to make sure those other pillars are in place as well. That's how you get the right type of change happening, and you negate the opportunity for gaps. So I just want to kind of mention that as a takeaway in terms of maybe something we haven't covered today.
All right. Patrick, what are your key takeaways or pieces of advice?
Well, I'm absolutely agree with everything that's been said here today by everyone on the call. I think that the ESG thing was really interesting to me, because I had to actually I see this in the what is it, Doonesbury every day. They talk about ESG, and I see it in the cartoons and I never really researched what it was. I just assumed it was HR something or other. And so I decided in preparation for this call that I better figure out what ESG is. And I was really heartened to see that people are thinking about, and when you think about as a human race, what things we should care about. I was really heartened to see that showed up on the meter and some of the responses and answers. And so, and I wonder, we at Juniper Networks, like we think about what can we do to add to to solve some of the world's problems. And we have active programs to reduce our power consumption, to become, we actually have a very big green effort internally. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel like, in the end, that we're a carbon neutral company, and that we care deeply about the future of the world and the human race and networks in general. And so we are, I was heartened to see that, frankly.
I love that. If I could just jump in on that as well, because it's great to hear. It's my passion area. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it just shows we've got an evolution in business models that's happening at the moment. It is something that's resonating with so many people, even the onboarding of new employees as well. People are looking for purpose, and they want that shared values alignment about what you believe in personally, what you support, who you advocate, who you work for, etc. Is all coming together. And I think we've got a real opportunity, and this area of work in particular is a ripple effect. We can help so many other organizations to do better in what they're doing. So it's not just what you do, like within my organization with Juniper and our various colleagues and collaborators, but the knock-on effect. We can build a contagion of positive change if we do this right. So I couldn't agree more. It was music to my ears when I saw that in the top 3. So yeah, it's really heralds well. And the positive take from the pandemic, I think, is that new focus on doing well by doing good, effectively.
All right. Thank you both. That was great. Thanks to both my speakers, Patrick Malampy of Juniper Networks and Sally Eves of Tomorrow's Technology Today. And thanks to you, our audience, for joining us. If you're interested in learning more, be sure to visit the Resources Center on your console and click on the link provided. For Network World and Juniper Networks, I'm Barbara Call.